Congratulations, Masters. You have made it to banner number 2. And first up on that banner that we're going to be talking about here is our 4-star unit. As we know, it is Miyu. She is returning as a summer unit. She's one of the Illya trio at this point. And it's been interesting to see her kind of get this summer choice here. This is one of my predictions for a long time because I felt like they probably would complete the Illya trio, but they maybe did it in a way that I did not expect. So Miyu is coming to us as an AoE Arts Lancer, and that's kind of interesting. She is going to be the 4-star on banner number 2 here, and she's going to be paired alongside Summer Ryogi Shiki, basically. So this one is intriguing, not only because of, again, just the AoE Lancer category here and her being yet another Summer Arts AoE Lancer, but also just due to the way that they actually implemented her. And we'll talk about her here in a second. So let's go ahead and let's start off with her raw stats here before we get to some of the nitty-gritty numbers later. Basically, she's going to start out with about 9.9k attack. This is actually really solid. This is knocking on the door to 10k. So as far as attack numbers go, her cards for a 4-star, just raw without any skills attached, will do pretty solid damage. HP value here is only about 11k. This is maybe a little bit more concerning, but I think we'll be fine all in all with that. Her attribute is Man. She has star absorption of 88, which is a little bit on the lower end, but it is what it is. Star generation of 11.8. NP charge attack of only 0.41, and this is maybe a little bit concerning because this means that Miyu is going to have to basically revolve around her deck a lot and her skills in order to get the refund that she maybe needs at times. Now, taking a look at this, she does have NP charge defense of 4%. This is kind of standard for our Lancer, so nothing too much to write home about. Death rate's 23%. This is actually a little bit under average. And alignment is lawful good in stages 1 and 2, but lawful evil in her 3rd ascension. She is female gendered. She is basically a child servant, a hominide servant, a humanoid, a living human, a normal servant, a 7-night servant, a summer mode servant, and weak to Enema Elish. The interesting part about this and why I mentioned the NP charge attack rate here is because as we move on to her deck, you guys can actually see she has double arts, double quick. This is a non-standard Lancer deck. A standard Lancer deck would have 1 fewer arts card and a 2nd Buster card. She traded one of those out for an extra NP gain card. All of her hit counts are above or at average. The Buster and the extra card are the ones that average. The quick and the arts, the dominant part of the deck, is actually above average. So that's really, really good there. And that's probably a big reason why they set the NP gain rate so low, but also due to the charge that she has in her kit. As we move on to her first skill, you guys can see she has quick and arts performance up of 3 turns at 30%. This is actually a pretty good tandem steroid. You see a lot of 20% nowadays, so 30% is definitely solid. She has self debuff immunity 3 times 3 turns. This just can be good for preventing, things from interfering with her kit. And she does heal herself every turn by 1,000 for 3 turns. Interestingly enough, that part does not level with the skill, and I'm kind of surprised by that, but it is what it is. Her second skill charges her own NP gauge, and this is where things get tricky. So she has a base charge of 30%, up to 30% at rank 10 of the skill. And then she will charge 10% of her NP gauge based off the number of Illya units on the field except for herself. What does that mean? Well, a little bit of a spoiler here. Her third skill allows her to apply the Illya attribute to not only all allies, but also all enemies. So this is a really intriguing skill, as this will allow her to combine this effect with her normal charge skill. So if you're facing a 3 enemy wave, this means that Miyu's going to get 3 stacks of Illya from that. She's going to get 2 more from the allies, each of them bringing her up 10% charge. So up to 50% charge in a normal 3 enemy node. And that is intriguing because when we combine this with her 30% charge, it means she can be an 80% charger. But I think when we look at this skill, when we look at her deck being 4, NP generation strong cards, we maybe see that's the reason for the lower base NP gain rate. And it doesn't stop there. This also increases the party's NP damage for 3 turns by 20%, and the party's buff removal resistance one time over 3 turns by up to 100%. So you really do want to lure the skill if you're going to be using Miyu, and it is a very, very strong aspect of her kit. The third skill here is going to be her self-survival. It's going to grant herself invincibility for 2 attacks, 3 turns, as well as increasing her own NP generation rate for 3 turns to kind of help that lower base NP gain rate. Again, that part does scale with the skill and is up to 30%. And will increase her own critical star generation rate for 3 turns by 50%. This is an interesting addition because she doesn't have a terribly strong star generation rate, but she does have good hit counts on the quick cards, and even her arts cards do have high hit count. So this could be utilized maybe not as good or as effectively as someone like Caster Gilgamesh with his star generation skill, but still fairly good for an arts unit in terms of star generation. It will also from there, as we mentioned before, inflict the Illya Trait for 3 turns to party and enemies except for herself. So that's why we didn't include herself in the charge calculation there. But you guys can see this does actually translate into more charge for her. So it is a very, very effective thing. The big thing to denote, make sure you always use the third skill before you use the second skill. Otherwise, you will just hamstring the amount of charge you get. Her passive skill, she has Magic Resistance B. This is just some additional debuff resistance, territory creation, but she has a unique version called Inshu, and this one's going to increase her arts performance by 6%, but also increase her own critical damage by 10% while an Illya unit is alive on the field. Keep in mind, again, this is both allies and enemies, so this is really, really effective for her. Though this does make her a little bit more difficult to use against basically enemies that are going to have some sort of capability of resisting the Illya Trait. She has infinite mana supply, interestingly enough, which is just an additional 5% per turn. So you guys can see the NP gain rate at this point, just kind of a non-issue with how many aspects to her kit that she has. As well as for Append skills, you could definitely do things like the mana loading. You can start that out, get that Lord, and basically have 20% starting charge. You could also do something like skill reloading, aka the 5th Append here, that would reduce the cooldown of her skills, allowing her to maybe get back to them faster. And then from there, you have things like crit damage, the extra attack finesse, and then last and kind of least, in my opinion, would be the 3rd Append, which is the anti-caster attack damage aptitude. To me, this one's not got a whole lot of synergy. Not really worth your coins at the current point in time. Now, looking at her Noble Phantasm, she has a 4-hit AoE Arts NP. Now, normally low hit counts on an Arts NP may be a little concerning, but it's not too bad because, again, it is Arts and it has the highest NP generation of all card types. So she should be fine with that. Again, it's going to deal damage to all enemies. It's then going to charge the party's NP gauge by 10% and charge the NP gauge of all Illya allies by 10%. So basically, she charges her allies by 20%, assuming you've popped the 3rd skill, but she will only charge herself by 10% after the NP because she herself cannot get that Illya trait due to the fact that it excludes her. Her overcharge effect increases her own damage against enemies with evil alignment for 3 turns, activating first, but because of that 3-turn duration, that means this is a power modifier and not a super effective modifier. The difference here is tangible, as a super effective modifier would be far stronger, and even as far as power mods go, this is a relatively weak one. The good news is this is a pretty wide niche. There are a lot of evil aligned enemies out there, so there's definitely some good solid work you can do here. And it does scale with the overcharge, so you can get this up to a normal power mod scaling, though it would require 500% overcharge in order for that to happen. So now, based off of that, what would be my recommendations for Illya craft essences? Or sorry, not Illya, Miyu. I'm going to keep making that mistake in this one because everything is Illya. But Miyu basically is going to be really solid with things like Black Rail. She's going to be really good with anything that could grant her maybe invuln pierce if the situation calls for it. And that's really all you should have to consider, because of the sheer amount of charge that she has. Getting the mana loading of 20% combined with her potential 80% charge means you can start her from 0, so it's really just about getting the maximum damage output craft essence you can get her. And why am I saying that? Because Miyu's refund is not going to actually be bad in the end. Taking a look at this, you guys can see this is Miyu Lancer with 2 Castorias and a level 100 Black Grail. We do not require a third support at all for this to work. And basically, she, even with no overkill hits, will refund 66%. So, yeah, we can make this really, 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 really darn strong and still manage to maybe brute force loop, depending on whatever situation we're up against. Against only a single enemy, it'd be a lot less, but hey, it is what it is. Again, with the 80% charge, you can probably handle that by filling that in on like a middle wave or something where you would only have one enemy. Just for comparison's sake, here is Percival. Percival, under the same conditions, basically can full refund, but only at 2 overkill hits per enemy. So, a little bit harder for him to hit that, but you guys can see he does have higher refund numbers on average. The difference is, Percival does not have the same amount of charge, not even close. Taking a look at Miyu's actual damage numbers here, on the bottom you guys can see these are self-buff only neutral numbers, so this is kind of her in a complete vacuum, but let's be honest, these numbers are relatively useless for the general purposes of things, other than comparative sake, but even then, a lot of things change when you get a unit into an actual composition. So NP1, we're looking at about 19k, all the way up at NP5, you're looking at about 32k. Against Evil, you get that 30% power mod, so you're looking at 24k at NP1 and 40k at all the way up to NP5. Taking a look at her composition in just a normal sort of setup here, 2 times Castoria with Black Grail, the numbers don't look very good. You're only seeing 95k here with double Castoria and a Black Grail on all 3 waves. Similarly with Evil, it is going to get stronger due to the 3-turn duration and the stacking capability of that. So that is something to denote, is that against an Evil setup, Miyu will just keep getting stronger and stronger and stronger. The reason this is actually really nice, though, is because this calculation does not include a third support. You easily could provide a third support like a Bride, like Hamamo, like Proto Merlin, or heck, Oberon, if you really just want to get stronger and more capable. So to me, personally, these numbers are the base minimum of what you can pretty much expect, assuming you have a level 100 Black Grail and Castoria. Anything else, she's going to be even stronger. So that is an interesting thing to denote. Let's compare now with Percival again. So looking at this, Percival's one-shot numbers, maybe a little bit higher there at NP1, but by the time you get to NP5, he's still outpacing her, just not by a whole lot. Looking at his numbers across the board, he is also very samey in terms of damage. He will edge her ever so slightly, but he will not have the evil niche to play off of. So similarly here, assuming you want a unit that's maybe able to handle more oddly structured nodes, or a unit that maybe just has that evil niche, Miyu is going to be a better option than Percival for pure looping. As for challenge, survivability, and things like that, Miyu still has some pretty good aspects to her, though Percival can be a pretty solid tank in his own right. So to me, both of these units are super capable. If you have one, you're probably fine and you don't need the other. But it's an interesting thing to denote that Miyu, again, is on a budget and is available now. So she's not going to be a 5-star that necessarily is going to cost you a ton probably to get copies, especially because she is a single 4-star on this banner. And usually when these types of units get reruns, they have a tendency to stick to the same banners that they were on before. So unfortunately, that means if you wanted a different SSR pairing, it's unlikely to happen very soon. But also, if you did want just the 4-star here, it is the only 4-star on rate up. does give you pretty good odds of obtaining them instead of having a split rate up like some of the summer banners have in the past. So again, I do think Miyu can be a solid option for you, especially as a 4-star Lancer. Probably not going to be your highest octane, highest damage Lancer for you, but definitely a pretty serviceable unit that can work her way through nodes and work in challenge content. How do you guys feel about Miyu Lancer? And which ascension for her is best? Will you be using her a ton, or will you maybe skip over this banner and in the hopes of getting something off of one of the others? I'll be curious to hear you guys' thoughts, and I will see you guys for the next video. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys again. Chat, I'm a good singer, kind of. I'm a good singer for an old white dude.